Mary Skelter 2 is making its way to the West, but only on the Switch. Did Sony ban its PS4 release over here, or is this the start of the Japanese exodus from the PlayStation 4? Now, I am still working on a much more in-depth video on Sony's censorship policy, but for those not in the loop, here's a summary I've tried my best to trim down. Sony moved their headquarters to the USA some years ago now, and have since put together a department that approves content for their platform based on an almost undefined censorship policy that doesn't actually contain any guidelines. This vague policy has so far been almost exclusively targeted at Japanese developers, with some 27 or more Japanese games having been hit already, and seemingly no enforcement on Western developers other than that stupid Super Seducer game. Some people act very high and mighty about the whole thing, saying that it's a good thing because the only games getting caught up in it are distasteful in their eyes, despite the fact that they, and Sony, seem perfectly okay with implied rape in their games and explicit nudity in the form of slave women being forced to pole dance. If you haven't realized it yet, this is the actual problem with Sony's policy. It isn't the censorship part, it is the way they are enforcing it and the clear double standard. It is Sony's platform, and if they want to censor content on it, then I say go for it. But a censorship policy needs clearly defined guidelines, and it needs to be applied uniformly to everyone and not just developers from a single country. There is a reason ratings boards like the ESRB and PEGI have guidelines. It's so developers have a rough idea of what they can and cannot do in order to get their rating of choice. Sony's policy has no guidelines, none. There is no policy really, it's just some people that look at a game and decide whether they like it or not. This content approvals department has been known to change decisions on a whim, and something that has been approved today may not be approved tomorrow, and worse than that, content that has been approved for a Western game may not be approved for a Japanese one. Add on to this that Japanese developers are forced to submit content approvals in English even if they don't plan on releasing their game in the West and in English. And if you don't see how crazy that is, imagine if the roles were reversed and Western indie developers only releasing their games in English had to submit content approvals in Japanese to Sony Japan. You cannot be mad at EA and BioWare management for their treatment of development staff on games like Anthem while also defending Sony's policy in its current state, because they are effectively hurting developers in the exact same way. With Sony's current policy, a Japanese developer doesn't know what is and isn't okay. What is and isn't okay could change on a daily basis, and they are having to essentially blindly make their games and hope they haven't crossed over the invisible line that only Sony can see. It is putting undue stress on developers and plunging their livelihoods into uncertainty, and absolutely none of it is necessary. The only thing they need to do is provide transparent, unambiguous guidelines and ensure the policy is being enforced on developers regardless of their country of origin. If you think that is unreasonable, then you are simply a selfish and uncaring person. Now, since this policy has been in effect and is clearly hurting Japanese developers, many people have wondered why they keep opting to release their games on PS4. There are two simple answers for this. The PS4 still has the largest user base, but more importantly, a lot of the games released up to this point were likely in development for the PS4 before this censorship policy was in effect. I have speculated that from this year, Japanese developers will be releasing their games on the Switch more and more, and may even start shifting from the PS4 entirely, and we could be looking at one of the early titles making this jump. Idea Factory International announced that they would be bringing Mary Skelter 2 to the West, but only to the Nintendo Switch. Mary Skelter 2 was released in Japan on the PS4 last year, with a Switch version being announced but not yet released. Idea Factory International haven't said why the PS4 version isn't making its way west. Did Sony block its release like they did with Omega Labyrinth Z, or did Idea Factory decide it wasn't worth it to go through Sony's bullshit? In any case, Mary Skelter 2 will be coming to the West presumably this year, but a release window hasn't yet been announced. The good news for those wondering if you need to have played the first game to play this one is that Mary Skelter 2 actually comes with a revamped version of the first game called Mary Skelter Nightmares. I'm sure I'll provide an update on it when we learn more, but for now I'll leave a link to the official website in a pinned comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all soon.